Gaming Bolt presents 15 things you need to know about PlayStation VR. We have a lot to talk about, so without wasting your time, let us begin right away. Every game will run at 60 frames per second. 60 FPS is the minimum standard stipulated by Sony for all developers working on games for PlayStation VR, meaning that they will not allow games on PSVR to drop below that even fractionally. It is also considered to be the minimum requirement to avoid nausea in VR. Just as a frame of reference, stereoscopic 3D at lower frame rates can make you queasy, but is a joy to behold at higher frame rates, like in games such as The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Something similar would probably be true in VR as well. You need to buy the camera. The PlayStation camera is mandatory to run PSVR, however, it will not be included in all the packages. The camera tracks the head's motion, without which it can't render games and images in VR properly. A bundle has been announced for $500, and it will include 2 Move controllers, a PlayStation camera, a copy of PSVR Worlds, along with everything else you get in the base PSVR package. The cheapest entry into VR gaming at $399. Okay, well, technically Gear VR is cheaper. However, PSVR is the cheapest high-end VR headset at $399. In comparison, Oculus is $599, whereas the Vive is $799. In addition, unlike the Vive and the Oculus, you don't need a super high-end PC to run PSVR. That said, you do need to have a couple of Move Wand controllers in the PS camera, so there are extra costs to contend with. Over 230 studios are working on games for PSVR. PlayStation VR is the most supported VR headset. Sony's indie and development relations team's good work seems to have translated pretty well into PSVR. DICE's Star Wars Battlefront, in fact, will be getting a VR version exclusive to the PSVR pretty soon. Sony have been using this as an example to promise major AAA releases in the future. PlayStation VR supports Roomscale experiences. PSVR theoretically supports Roomscale VR, like the HTC Vive. Sony demonstrated how it might work during GDC. All game developers will have complete freedom to define the scale of the playing area. It remains to be seen, though, how this would really work, considering PSVR is seemingly tethered to the PS4. It supports Social Screen. PSVR supports asymmetric second screen gameplay, a lot like what the Wii U promised. Theoretically, the person wearing the VR headset can play with others not wearing headsets. The person with the headset performs actions in the VR world, which are rendered on the TV screen, while other players without headsets play with regular DualShock controllers. This was one of the stated design goals for Sony, to make VR more social and therefore more acceptable to the non-hardcore gaming masses. Sony is serious about quality of VR games, has a bad practices video for developers. Even though a lot of VR enthusiasts are skeptical about PSVR, Sony seems committed to delivering a high-end VR experience. They want to ensure that VR games properly leverage the medium. In fact, they also have a bad practices video for VR developers, telling them what standards and design goals they should strive for and what faults they should avoid. Over 50 titles launching between October and the end of the year. At this point in time, at least 50 titles are confirmed to launch for PSVR between its launch in October and the year's end. Some of them, in fact, actually look pretty promising, including the likes of Riggs Mechanized Combat League, Battlezone, and Eve Valkyrie. If this is an indication of what the future holds for Sony's latest tech, it's certainly something to be optimistic about. All PS4 games can be played on PlayStation VR. Just like how Oculus Rift lets you play your Xbox One games in a virtual theater, PSVR lets you play existing PS4 games on a virtual screen too. Essentially, you get the experience of playing Bloodborne, for example, on one massive IMAX screen. Your head would still be tracked, meaning you can still look around in game, making for more immersive experiences. 3D audio. Having a 3D world is all well and good, but it's only one aspect of total immersion. The world needs to sound as real as it looks. This is going to be a major component in creating believable virtual worlds. 3D audio is a lot like surround sound, but much more convincing, considering the fact that it will create differentiated sources of sound to add to the immersion. 3D audio will be handled by PSVR's external processing unit. Comfort level. Sony have more experience creating high-end electronics than either HTC or Oculus, so obviously PSVR will be the most comfortable headset to use. Not necessarily in terms of discomfort caused by VR games, but in terms of how comfortable the headset itself is to put on. The best shape combined with adjustable straps means PSVR sculpts itself around your head. PS Move controller will not be required, but is recommended. PSVR is compatible with the DualShock 4 controller, meaning that you don't actually need to buy PS Move wands to enjoy the headset. That said, you do get the most amount of enjoyment if you do buy yourself a set of Move controllers. Move controllers for PSVR are equivalent to Oculus Touch controllers. However, keep in mind that only Move wands will work. It's not a peripheral, but a platform on its own. Sony has stated multiple times that they will treat PSVR like its own new platform. This means that, hopefully, we can imagine the same kind of push for first and third-party support, as well as marketing for PSVR as we can for a regular Sony console or handheld. Of course, Sony said this for Move before they proceeded to do jack all with it. Meanwhile, the Vita, which actually was a new platform, withered on the vine before it even had a chance to take off, thanks to Sony's negligence. So make of that what you will. You will get a Playroom for VR. Playroom, which is the quirky bundled software suite that comes free with all PlayStation 4 systems, will also be getting a version for PlayStation VR. This is probably one of the most sensible software decisions we can think of, as Playroom seems like an ideal fit for the kind of social VR experience that Sony is pushing for. Sony is not taking losses. Sony have usually incurred hits with all their hardware launches so far. They are not, however, going to be selling PSVR at a loss, which means that this is the first time they're not going to take a loss with a major gaming hardware launch. This is especially surprising given PSVR's already pretty low price point. This was a stated goal for Sony as well. In their own words, they are a profit-seeking corporation. They also said that if the VR headset was making losses, they would have less financial resources to dedicate to software development and marketing. We hope you've enjoyed this video, so please consider subscribing to our channel. We do original content, reviews, graphics comparison, and much more, and try to upload a video every day. Thank you very much for checking us out.